Hardeep Singh Puri ji, Union Minister of State for Civil Aviation, Urban Housing, and ladies and gentlemen, members of the press, members of Outlook, and very heartiest compliments for everyone at Outlook for putting together such a wonderful evening for all of us this afternoon. Now, the subject given to me today was to talk about slowdown. And I think slowdown is on literally everyone's mouth these days. And people really are keen to hear, is this for real? How long will you feel it? When is it coming out? And I think literally there are talking heads on television talking about it literally day in and day out. I actually wanted to share just two perspectives as to what I believe is causing today's slowdown over the last maybe 5 or 6 months. And secondly, I spoke to a few entrepreneurs before coming here today, and I tried to understand from them really how they are dealing with it. Then I'm trying to top up on it our own experiences of how we are dealing with it at this point of time. And I just thought that this whole process might give you a picture about how we are right now thinking about the whole thing. Now, when we think of the source, a lot of people have a lot of explanations. But what really comes to my mind is the fact that between 2010 to 2015 was a period when really there were a lot of slowdown. The GDP was slowing down quarter on quarter on quarter. All of us who were there and witnessing the cycle at that point of time saw that the GDP was coming down from 10% to 9% to 8%, 7, 6, 5. Quarter on quarter things were coming down. Fiscal deficit was really very high. At one point of time it touched even 6%. Oil prices really were close to above $100 of the price of crude for 5 years in a row. I mean, the highest price of a particular year. Of late, it's been between $50 to $60. So, that sort of a fiscal deficit, and inflation was very high. In fact, it was 9 to 10% for 3 or 4 years. So, in the midst of all this, there was a huge credit growth as well, and largely to corporate credit, let me say, building roads, infrastructure, power companies. We know the names of companies. We know the 2G scam accused companies, coal scam accused companies. In the midst of such a high inflation, high fiscal deficit, and a slowing economic activity, that sort of a huge infusion of credit growth happened, particularly in the corporate side. That sort of the cycle played itself out between 2015 to 2020 when the AQR was announced. And I think so most public sector banks had significant losses to take, some private sector banks as well. And 8 lakh crore rupees, and that's not a small sum, 8 lakh crore rupees was written off by state-owned banks in this period. When I think of that number, I really think instead of writing off 8 lakh crore rupees in the name of all the loans given, let me say, in the prior period of 5, 6 years, if that amount of money had not been written off, and that amount of money was invested in either roads or infrastructure or growth and so on and so forth, we would be smiling at a very different economy today. So one thing is certain, that in the financial services, every issue comes with a lag. And I do not think we should ignore the excesses of 2010 to 15, for which as a nation we paid a price. That's one. The second part of the slowdown of the economy, as I understand it, is the fact that as a nation we are transforming from being a high parallel economy to being a more disclosed economy, or a white economy, as they say. Now, every transition brings with it its pain. So obviously GST has been one part of the story, demonetization was the other. But if you go back in time and see the 1991 story, initially a lot of Indian manufacturers lobbied against it. They said, so hard, so difficult, why should the foreigners come here, etc. But as it played out, the ones, of course, some died, but the ones who survived, then the larger Indian economy became more vibrant. So seeing in that light, either this portion, the first part of the story I talked about, writing off 8 lakh crores, of course, is regrettable. I don't think there's any positive upside of that. I can't think of any. But at least the second part of it, what we've been going through in terms of converting it to a more formal economy will pay off, will start with the J curve. In fact, there's a book called J curve, which actually talks about the initial negative impacts of any reform, but then the positives are up and away for many, many years to come. So hopefully this second part we talked about, we will see many more benefits in the years to come, and all of us who will be in this country and grow over the next 10, 20 years will see the benefits of having a developed economy with more formal economy and so on. Then, let's talk about the slowdown itself. Now, if we say there is a slowdown, some are affected, some are not affected. And before coming here, I tried to think to myself, saying that what is it that within the same period of slowdown, some NBFCs are smiling and saying life is good, and some of them are struggling. Some banks are saying, okay, we have a problem, and some banks are saying we don't have a problem. Some entrepreneurs are saying we have a problem, some to say they don't. Within the same sector, which means, therefore, that those who are at this point of time during the slowdown managing to conduct themselves well and run good businesses, they must have done something different than those of the others. And I tried to think hard about what is it that was causing this difference. So when you think of NBFCs, of course, if you think of the large NBFCs who are largely really well capitalized in good times, they were raising equity at the right times, were running good corporate governance, were running into more retail financing businesses. You see, even today, after slowdown, they're still growing by 25%. You see the NBFCs who were into real estate financing, and that too, I don't mean real estate like real estate houses. I mean really developing financing developers and large, chunky exposures as compared to their net worth, and were running asset liability mismatches, and were not raising capital. Of course, they are facing a trouble today. At Capital First, let me just tell you the company which I was associated with before merging it with IDFC Bank to make it IDFC First Bank now. Our real estate loan book in 2012 was 2,700 crores, lending to developers. In 5 years after that, we continuously brought it down from 2,700 crores to 500 crores and grew the retail book from 94 crores to 30,000 crores. Now, it is not an accident that it happened. Someone planned for it. And those who planned for it during the good times are then seeing the benefit of it when the slowdown comes. Because as the slowdown is coming now, many developers are in trouble, but our loan book was only 500 crores. It was not relevant in the larger scheme of things of maybe 1 lakh crores, and life moved on. Similarly, banks which were unprepared for this for this sudden change of events in the corporate sector, of course, had their share of trouble. One entrepreneur I talked to before coming here, I asked him, sir, what business do you do? He said, we make tubes. Then I said, okay, if you do the tubes business, how do you do it? He said, we import tubes from Germany, then we put it through a furnace, we cut it, put the fittings to it, and sell it to local manufacturers like, Telco, Mahindra & Mahindra, and Ashok Leyland, and so on. So I said, what happened to your turnover? He said, my turnover is down 40% over the last year. Well, that's not to be surprised because we all know what happened in the auto industry. But I said, how are you dealing with the situation? He says, look, my margins are still good. I will go through the situation comfortably. I said, how are your margins good? He said, when the times were good, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, at that point of time, we were buying world-class top-end furnaces, which were helping us produce much better finished tubes with least carbon. And then our margins were good. And then our margins, of course, have come down from 40% to 30%, but we are fine, we are going through it. But when I heard that through, again, I thought he prepared for it before a slowdown was happening. And during a slowdown, of course, he was living it through. I talked to one company who's a glycols maker. His turnover last year in 18-19 was 260 crores. This year is expecting 220 crores. Again, not surprising because he supplies glycols to many such companies, including some of these paint companies and so on. I said, how are you going through it? He said, one, we were diversifying at this point of time. 2, we are recycling the water that became steam and steam became water again when we are recycling the water and we saved money. Then I talked to a large paint company, Asian Paints, which is, of course, a listed company, and all the information about them is well known. I asked one of the senior people there that, how did you manage through this cycle? He said, look, about a year and a half ago, when the government is going after affordable housing in a very big way, and PM, Awas Yojana was coming, and we knew money is going to that sector, we launched more economy and paint products. And by that time we were launching it, slowdown was coming, GST came down from 28% to 18%, and then we were in the midst of that stuff, and we took off, and our sale numbers are looking good and fine. So when I heard about these stories, including our own story of trying to prepare for the slowdown when the things are not really looking so bad, I did felt that, look, slowdown, whether it is global economy or demonetization, or whether we want a parallel economy, or because of binging of the past, any which way, some slowdown or the other keeps coming every 5 or 6 years, maybe 10 years. So the companies which are prepared for it during the good times, from the many examples I showed to you or I talked to you, I definitely realized that it made a big difference. In our own case, we were a non-banking finance company, but I kept thinking to myself all the time, saying that what if we run out of money? What if we run out of money? Can we look for a banking license? Can we go to Reserve Bank of India and ask for a banking license? At that point of time, this IDFC bank was available or for a merger, and then we said, okay, lo and behold, we merge, and we're done. We get to become more safe. So every time when I look at these cases, I do feel that preparation during such periods does help during a slowdown. Then I discovered there are many companies who are slowdown or not slowdown are not affected at all. For example, I talked to one company which was going to waste, the kind of waste that goes to Deonar and all, I'm told close to about 40-50 million tons of waste are created across the country. And this gentleman was telling me that only close to about 14 million tons of these are processed. And he says that, look, all I'm doing is that I'm getting the waste, I'm converting it to bio pellets and giving it to manufacturing where they're burning the fuel and creating fuel out of it. So waste gets cleared, at the same time fuel gets created. And I said, what is the potential of the business? He said, unlimited, because the government is supporting it in the Swachh Bharat mission. CERC is paying better revenue for that fuel created rather than thermal fuel. So I talked to a lot of startups, and of course, all of us see how the startups are going on. There are startups in e-com, there are startups in healthcare, there are startups in education, there are startups in every one of those businesses. And those startups, when you talk to them, because they are operating in the new economy, they are operating on the platform of the UPI, the Aadhaar, the whole ecosystem that has been created, they are flying up and away. So therefore, when I see many of these cases around us, it is not the slowdown that is uniformly felt for everyone. The new economy people are just smiling. They are, of course, very, very happy. Even the incumbents are split between the two, the ones who were prepared and the ones who were not prepared. Now, the ones who are not prepared are now facing a slowdown. What do? They are in the midst of it. Okay, they were not prepared. How do they deal with it? Now, some companies are, of course, pivoting very fast. I came across one large commodities company, and that company traditionally was manufacturing the commodity, selling it to the distributor selling it to the retailer, and the retailer was then selling it to the architect, and the architect was end of the day going and putting those goods or that commodity into the people's homes. Think of it like paints and cements and stuff like that. Now, I said, okay, how are you transforming? He said something very interesting. What he's doing is, instead of going through the traditional route of distributor, retailer, architect into the home, he's creating an app whereby he's trying to be embedded in the customer's wallet and through an app, and is directly reaching the consumer and giving many value-added services so that customer then calls for the brand or calls for the commodity, which is otherwise a commodity. It's almost like the Intel Inside story. Again, so this is a case of company which is a commodity company is now becoming a consumer company from B2B to B2C, and that is a transformation. Now, when I see these cases, of course, either we can pivot or we can hunker. If we haven't tried any of these, of course, we can hunker and we can hope to run through the cycle. Why do I say hope to go through the cycle if we just put our head down, cut costs, and maybe live it through? Now, I must point out to this audience as a last and parting note that if you try to recollect the period of 2010 to 2009 to 2019, I think it's had just a lot of ups and downs and almost a lot of moving items. If you recollect, 2009 had just come out of the credit GFC. 2010, for some reason, the GDP soared back to something like 10%, and all of us started feeling that, look, India's invincible, and we're back to the growth, and India's destined for growth. It didn't play out like that. Then we know how the fiscal deficit, all that played out. So 2010, 11, 12, 13, 14 was all pretty difficult things, I think. High inflation, high fiscal deficit, scams, 2G scams, coal scam. We've heard every problem at that point of time. And it is structurally a big problem for many of us. 2013, MSF rates went up by 300 basis points in one day. 2014, there was an election. 2016 was demonetization, which changed a lot of things. 2017 was GST implementation, which changed a lot of things. Despite having such monumental changes during these 10 years, I must just point out to you, the credit growth in the country, the credit loan book in the country in 2009 was 28 lakh crores. After all the problems we faced in 10 years, the credit book in the country today is 100 lakh crores, 3x. When we talk of deposits in the market, in 2009, Indian deposit market with all banks put together was 35 lakh crores. After all the problems I talked to you for 10 years, it is close to about 125 lakh crores today, that's 3x. So I sometimes want to feel that if after all the problems we could be 3x in 10 years, then again, there's no reason, again after 10 years we wake up and maybe 2029 or 2030, the 100 lakh crore market of credit will probably be 300 lakh crores, maybe the 125 lakh crore of deposits probably be 4 lakh crores, and you get the drift. So in that situation, if we think of the long and we stay focused there, then we just have to, for those, let me say, unprepared for this slowdown, if we can put our head down, cut costs, somehow live through the cycle, then I think good days will come back and we'll ride the curve again. And if those who are prepared, of course, good luck here. They're all multiplying the market caps, as you could see from the Sensex, which happens to be 40,000 despite all the slowdown. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. That's my brief piece to all of you. It was enjoyable talking to all of you. Thank you.